Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's News Explosion.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Tim's News Explosion. This is a new weekly news blast show where I will untwist the news narratives that have been spun in the week for a fast-paced 30-minute digest every Monday evening on the WilmsFront channels at 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time. Hello to everyone here in the chat tonight, and I've also put as always, on YouTube, DLive, and Entropy. I've put the link there in the live chat there, so you can throughout the show ask me a direct question or send through a direct super chat. I see a few familiar faces in the chat. So the design of this show is to, well, as the name says, bring you a fast news blast in just 30 minutes, keeping the WilmsFront show on Thursday evenings for featured interviews with fascinating guests. So why don't we get straight into it? And I've titled tonight's show Deformed Nations because, well, that's what's happening to a lot of the Western nations at the moment, particularly in the United States with is it fair to call Joe Biden president of the United States? I mean, is he the commander in chief, or is it the people all around him who are making the decisions for him, pulling the strings? He managed not just long ago to put together a coherent speech in what was a de facto State of the Union address before a joint sitting of Congress, and this is what he said was the greatest threat to American democracy.
Make no mistake, in 20 years, terrorism has metastasized. The threat has evolved way beyond Afghanistan. Those of you in the intelligence committees, the foreign relations committee, defense committees, you know well, we have to remain vigilant against the threats to the United States wherever they come from. Al-Qaeda and ISIS are in Yemen, Syria, Somalia, other places in Africa, in the Middle East, and beyond. And we won't ignore what our intelligence agencies have determined to be the most lethal terrorist threat to the homeland today. White supremacy is terrorism. We're not going to ignore that either.
You heard that from Biden. The most lethal threat to the United States is what he calls white supremacy, and makes out that ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they're far away in the Middle East. They're never going to hurt the United States again. That's basically what he's saying. And during his speech, and a lot of the mainstream media in the US, they've tried to attribute white supremacy, link it to recent attacks on Asian Americans. This is despite the various obvious fact in footage such as this that these attacks are being carried out by people of African American appearance. So the person carrying out this attack, their name is Sydney Hammond. So this is in San Francisco in California, and this was a previous attack this Sydney Hammond took against an Asian American. Now, despite the fact that, well, I mean, they could argue that it's very grainy security footage, and it might not show it just might show a dark, shadowy figure that might not might not exactly mean that they're African American. Now, the response that the progressives and race baiters over in the United States come up with to explain this is, even though a lot of these a lot of these hate crimes against Asian Americans committed this year, many of them by African Americans, even though they're not perpetrated by white people, they are inspired by language such as Trump calling the coronavirus the China virus, that apparently Donald Trump is inspiring African Americans to attack Asian Americans for spreading the coronavirus. That must be the logic there. What do you mean, Jazz? This is Tim's News Explosion. Aren't you paying attention to the content? Yes, you're a bit late, Jazz, as Melissa said. You missed the intro, but if you stick around to the end, I'll play it again. You got to be on time. I think I gave people plenty of enough notice. But anyway, going back to this, I'm not sure if it's fair to call it racially motivated hate crime against Asian Americans. They could be opportunistic because Asian Americans, they tend to be in the wealthy upper end of US society, and so obviously thieves who want to steal off them know that they've got a bit of money on them. But it's also because that Asian Americans, same with Asian Australians here, a lot of them are shopkeepers, and so they run a lot of the milk bars and that, which obviously they have been traditional targets for armed robbers. So that's another factor to consider there. But apparently there's been 33 attacks on Asian Americans in the United States. So it is obviously it's receiving a lot of attention in the US media, but obviously this is the thing about crime in the US these days. It doesn't matter what the actual crime is these days, just the racial dynamics. Yep, Colin, exactly right. Asian Americans are the most successful racial group in America. And if we rewind a bit to the end of 2019 in the United States, particularly in New York and New Jersey, there was an epidemic of hate crimes against Jewish Americans in those areas, mainly perpetrated by African Americans, especially those belonging to the Black Hebrew Israelites extremist religion there. So that's just for a bit of context there. I was listening to Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense the other day, where I'll repeat what he said. Most African Americans are law-abiding people, but you cannot twist what the progressives are trying to do, twist the facts that know that these attacks on Asian Americans aren't being perpetrated by white people, by African Americans. Now, obviously, the mainstream media made a lot about that white man who shot up a Asian Mashad's parlor, I think killed 6 or 7 people. And it was described, even without any context, that it must be a racially motivated hate massacre, but he said himself, the murderer, the killer, that he shot it up because he was a sex addict, and that was some weird twisted way he thought would fight his sex addiction and fight other people's sex addiction, just to murder a whole bunch of masseurs. But yes, in the United States, in the moment, if there's a mass shooting or a violent assault, the main thing that seems to matter is not the actual crime itself, but what race are the perpetrator and the victim there. This is how warped fighting crime has been in the United States at the moment. Colin Penfold and the Black Areas Korean own all the stores. Yes, well, going back to the LA riots in 1992, which was also in California post the police officers, LAPD, who were accused of assaulting and hitting Rodney King were found not guilty. There was a huge riot, and Korean American shopkeepers were on their roofs shooting to protect their property there. Australian Protectionist Party says Timmy looks like David Teague, the coach of Carlton FC. Do I? I hope I'm. I hope I'm a bit more successful than he is at the moment. Carlton had an almighty choke against the Bulldogs at the Mother's Day game at Marvel Stadium. It was quite the spectacle there. Now, speaking of mass attacks in New Zealand today, there was a. Oops. I'll just do share screen here. There was a mass stabbing at a Countdown supermarket in Dunedin, which is in the far south island. It's a city in the far south of the South Island there. So Countdown is the New Zealand equivalent of Woolworths. He was apprehended by fellow shoppers in the supermarket. 3 people critically injured and fighting for lives in intensive care. There were another person suffered a serious injury, and all 4 are being treated in Dunedin Hospital. Among the victims are a couple. Police believe it was a random attack while Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. There was nothing to suggest it was a domestic terror event. Maybe the stabber there, I assume he was using a semi-automatic knife there. Maybe he heard a dog barking, and that's what triggered it off, the Countdown slasher. But yes, horrific event there, not what you're expecting when you're going down to the local Woolworths or Coles. But of course, the first thing people think of when something like this happens is it a terror attack, and particularly since it was a town city in the South Island where Christchurch was or is. That's probably where a lot of people's mind leapt to there. Now, it's coming up on that topic a week and a half since the Australia Parliament's Joint Parliamentary Committee on Security and Intelligence held 2 days of hearings into their inquiry into extremist movements and radicalizations in Australia. We haven't heard anything since the chair, James Paterson, Liberal Senator, said supplementary evidence and answers is due by May 21st, so we probably won't hear more from that. But there has been a terrorist extremism in the news in Australia, and it comes from the Islamic State flavor, where an accused Islamic State supporter, Mohammed Zabibi, was apprehended when he arrived in Australia after being deported from Turkey. He was returned to Australia 8 years after he left to become involved in the Syrian civil war. Mohammed Zubi, 30, arrived in Melbourne late Saturday afternoon after being deported by Turkey, where it served 18-month prison sentence for joining Islamic State and related crimes. Wow, you only got 18 months in Turkey. That's months in a complex arrangement, highlighting the issues of returning foreign fighters. Zabibi was arrested on arrival by the Australian Federal Police and taken into Victoria Police custody, where he was to commence a fortnight COVID quarantine before being extradited to Sydney on a New South Wales arrest warrant. So apparently these, it's Australia Police. No, this is Australia Federal Police taking him away. They don't look like police officers. They just look like the people at the COVID testing sites there. It's, yeah, they don't look like police as well. Can't they have, like, say, I don't know, police scrubs, and yeah, it just looks completely bizarre. But yes, that was the only Australian terror-related arrest in the past week. Now, you would have heard late on Friday night that Facebook's independent oversight board or court, its kangaroo court, had upheld its decision to ban former President Donald Trump from their platform. And yes, their headlines were that this was always they made it out like it had some sort of legal judicial standing, when it's just a Facebook appointed kangaroo court to review their decisions. And so, yeah, they basically said, yeah, it was justified in banning Trump after the January 6th storming of the Capitol. Reg Penny says, Facebook sucks. I know that you got Permizucked, Reg, recently. And another website, Facebook page that got Permizucked recently was, I'm not sure if anyone in the chat has heard of LifeSite News. It's a Canadian based pro-life, pro-family, pro-Christian website. This is from Cauldron Pool. Facebook has permanently banned LifeSite News after accusing the pro-life news website of publishing false information related to C-19 that could attribute physical harm. So it referenced an article on April 10 mentioning the V's. And so the marketing director of LifeSite News, Rebecca Roberts, said, "We have known this day was coming for months now. Facebook has been silencing any voice that goes against their beliefs and agendas. Our LifeSite News Facebook page is removed simply because we have shared reports of doctors, nurses, and research experts. LifeSite News and encourage their followers to continue sharing their content across social media. This group can be followed on Telegram, Gab, MeWe, Rumble, and Brighton." That's certainly something that I'll be doing there. And as most of you are aware, things are not going well in Cut Canada stand there. They have a never-ending COVID lockdown. They already jailed one Christian preacher up there for opening his church during lockdown. And now they have gone after another pastor here.
This is the stuff you see in communist China. Now it's happened twice in Alberta.
So that was Pastor Artur Pawlowski. I think that's a Polish name. Pawlowski and his brother David were arrested for organizing and attending an in-person gathering earlier that day. The Calgary Provincial Police said this includes inciting people to gather for religious worship. And we've known that Cut Canada stand has been on the downward spiral even before Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister. You could basically call Canada now frozen Victoria with the way the things are going. I remember earlier this year that Canada decided that they wanted to list the Proud Boys as a terrorist organization. The Proud Boys in Canada have disbanded there. But going back to the story that I started with about the rising attacks on Asian Americans by mainly African Americans, that this was in the New York Post, that the US Proud Boys are reportedly getting huge Asian American support due to BLM. And New York Post just describes them as right-wing. As a huge wave of support from Asian Americans who fear Antifa and Black Lives Matter want to bring communist rule to the US, according to a new investigation. Recent fundraising efforts for the Proud Boys saw as many as 80% of donations coming from people with Chinese surnames, according to a review of leaked information obtained by US Today. And there is a quote here. You have to understand how we feel. We came from communist China and we managed to come here and appreciate it here so much. Rebecca Quiner recently donated $500 to the group, told the paper. And it's true that the Proud Boys, one of their most prominent views is anti-communism, preventing the cultural Marxist takeover of the West, and they're constantly smeared as a white supremacist hate group. But any biological man can join the Proud Boys. They have a lot of Asian members, including here in Australia. A lot of them also have Asian wives and children. So there is quite a Asian connection with the Proud Boys, which there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, because a lot of Asians who come to the West are fleeing communist regimes. Obviously, there are, as we've found, a lot of particularly from China, communist spies there. But obviously, there was another article which said that many Asian Americans regretted supporting Black Lives Matter. Well, as the name suggests, Black Lives Matter is a black only rights organizations. So what did they expect there? But that is an interesting development. Down back here in Victoria, we had, one of the upper house Liberal MLCs, Bernie Finn, set off quite the firestorm yesterday, because remember that Chinese rocket to Mars that crashed in the Maldives there. Bernie Finn, Liberal MP, on his Facebook page posted the question of the day: where should the Chinese rocket land? A, on Waleed Ali, B, on the ABC, C, on Daniel Andrews, or D, on Lydia Thorpe. And yeah, there was mass outrage about this, people saying that he should be arrested for inciting violence. We had a reply from Louise Milligan, who is currently being sued for defamation, or as we call it around here, deformation, by Christian Porter, the Attorney General, for her report about a cabinet minister being accused of historical rape. There was some federal court hearings last week. It's not due to go to trial until September or November. The ABC's defense is not that they believe that Christian Porter is a rapist, but there was reasonable grounds to suspect him of rape. So they're not even going to argue that they believe that he is a rapist, just that there was reasonable grounds. So some might say that's a bit of a walkback, but this is what Louise Milligan said. Dear Bernie, we have on several occasions had very productive professional discussions about autism, given your portfolio and our shared parenthood of autistic boys. That you would joke about bombing my place of work, shared with hardworking, diligent, decent journalists, floors me. Well, hardworking, diligent, decent journalists, that's a debatable question. It is also surprising that a publicly elected representative would keep up replies on your Facebook page to your joke that refer to Victoria's first Indigenous senator as a try-hard Aboriginal, or to much-loved Australian as a pufferfish, the big mouth. Yes, Louise Milligan, Bernie Finn, I don't think would really think much of Louise Milligan's work, given that Bernie Finn is a devout Catholic, and Louise Milligan was basically one of the key drivers in the false imprisonment of Cardinal George Pell on historical child sexual abuses, which he's been exonerated from by the High Court last year. It found not guilty and was released from prison there. So no, I don't think Bernie Finn has much respect for you, Louise Milligan. But she is a sensitive person, despite a lot of the quite explosive allegations she put out there. She didn't take kindly to Dennis Hutt's Perth-based Patriot. Basically messaging her to say that Hope Porter takes you for everything that you've got. But yes, so we shall. It will be an interesting defamation trial later this year. I said in September of November. There's a lot of defamation cases going on in Australia at the moment. We have Peter Dutton suing a refugee activist, Shane Bazzi, who on Twitter called him a rape apologist, which was something that Green Senator Larissa Waters also called him, but then retracted and apologized for, said there was no basis for calling him that. And then you also have Deputy New South Wales Premier John Barilaro suing YouTuber Friendly Jordies for all the videos that Friendly Jordies, Jordan Shanks is his real name, has made over the past 6 months, accusing him of various forms of corruption with racist Italian mafia undertones. Now, a few follow-ups to some other Victorian developments. Remember Kate Hamilton, the Kingston City Council youth walker who got Parkdale secondary school boys who are white and Christian to stand up and called them oppressors. So apparently there's still an investigation ongoing, but the acting Premier James Merlino was asked about this during question time. He's the education minister as well. He said that what Kate Hamilton did was completely inappropriate, and said that it was and he condemned the actions of this local youth worker and was not the action of anyone in the education system, which that is pretty strong stuff for a state Labor education minister to say about an incident of anti-white racism in schools there. But we've all seen the photo of James Merlino with cultural Marxist Ros Ward, designer of the Safe Schools program, which is still being taught in Victorian schools there. Regis said defamation case between Lauren Southern and communist rat Marine Faruqi. Yes, I do know that Lauren Southern sent a concerns notice to Green Senator Marine Faruqi over on Twitter, which is outside of parliamentary privilege, trying to link her with Brenton Tarrant, the Christchurch killer, through the great what they call the Great Replacement conspiracy theory there. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes there. And tomorrow night is federal budget night, where it's going to basically be, to summarize it, a triple D night. It's going to be a debt and deficit disaster. Josh Frydenberg is going to go on a spend-a-thon, basically trying to prop up the economy through central bank created money, which is what is pushing up house prices. And also Neil Erickson, the Senator Slayer, is being sentenced tomorrow after being found guilty of disturbing religious worship at the Islamic prayers at Federation Square in April 2019. He rejected a community corrections order, which basically would have gagged him for 12 months from politically commentary and associating with any nationalists. So he could get the full 3 months imprisonment, or he could get a suspended sentence or a fine. We'll find out tomorrow morning. And so that brings us to the end of the first episode of Tim's News Explosion. I hope you enjoyed the fast show tonight. It goes so fast. It's already the end of the half an hour here. So in this case, short show is a good show. I'll be next back on Wednesday night for the Brawl in the Brain with Jared Searby, new time, 8:30 p.m. Victorian time on the Unshackled's YouTube channel. It will only go for an hour from 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. We're going to be responding to some chest beating put out by a local Antifa try-hard and failed comedian addressing what they've been up to on the weekend on our show. And then, of course, I'll be back for WilmsFront feature on Thursday evening, which my guest will be returning, Max Egan from the Crow House. We'll see if that stays up on YouTube, but it'll be uploaded to Odyssey afterwards. And then Trad Tasman Talk returns 6 p.m. Melbourne time on the Unshackled's YouTube channel. So thank you so much for watching tonight, and I will see you on Wednesday and see you again next Monday for another Tim's News Explosion to summarize the news the best I can. Good night, everyone.
Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's News Explosion.